Hello everyone, welcome to New Narratives for Nature. I'm Hannah Collins, your provocateur for today, so that's exciting, isn't it? I've been coming to communicate for years. I can remember walking around Bristol Zoo at one point, workshops in small buildings, and thank you so much to everybody who's helped me kind of shape a lot of the nature comms and engagement work that I've been responsible for over the time. I'm joining Communicate this year in a new role. So I'm still facilitating the sustainability community, and I'm also now an executive coach. So I work with ambitious sustainability leaders to help them maximise their impact in their careers so that they can leave the planet in a better state than they found it, basically. And I think our panel is going to be amazing today. I can't believe, as you guys were sending through your stories, I was like, this is going to be incredible. I'm so lucky to facilitate this. So we're going to hear from our wonderful speakers, and then we'll be opening it up to you for questions. So please do be thinking about those. I'll introduce you all. So Aisha Tandon is a science correspondent at the Carbon Brief, an award-winning UK-based website covering climate science, climate policy and energy policy. And Aisha is going to share an initiative to increase the diversity of voices who tell the story of climate change. Then we've got Jen Magret. She's director at Count Us In, where she helps co-create initiatives that use football's global reach to engage football fans and influence leaders, including the UK's Green Football campaign in Brazil, Terra FC, and next year she'll help launch a campaign in the run-up to the Men's World Cup. So previously, Jen led communications at Albert, which is the industry's leading organisation for environmental sustainability in film and TV. And finally, Beth Collier. So Beth is CEO of Wild in the City. She's a nature-allied psychotherapist, naturalist and ethnographer. For 15 years, she's led strategy supporting people of colour in finding a sense of belonging in nature and the UK countryside. Her research and writing have been influential in opening up national conversations to include Black perspectives on the dynamics of race within engagement with nature. So they're each going to speak for a few minutes, and then we'll open to the floor and the virtual floor. So welcome everyone online, and I'm excited to see what questions this is going to spark for you. So Aisha, over to you.
Fab, thank you so much. So I'm going to jump right in. Am I? Yes, I am. Okay, so my sort of journey on this story began in 2021. It was like I was 1 year into being a journalist. I really had not found my feet yet, but I was given the opportunity to pick a project that I wanted to work on. And so I decided to do something as a science writer on the lack of diversity in science. And so I looked at the 100 most highly cited climate science papers that were published over a 5-year period, and I analysed manually the 1,300 authors of those papers to find the gender balance and also what country they were from. Surprisingly, I found that 90% were from the global north. I found that 3/4 were men, and maybe we can talk a bit more about this later, but how highly cited you are, how highly published you are is kind of seen as a flag of your worth as a scientist. So this fed into a lot of other discussions I had with scientists. And it kind of started me off on this journey, I guess, of really trying to increase the diversity of experts in my reporting. And so just very quickly a note on why this is important. Again, I could speak on this for hours, but a lot of people who then interacted with me about this story, a lot of people on social media were calling me woke and saying it doesn't matter and saying science is objective. It doesn't matter who tells the story of science. Science is facts. Science is, all of that stuff. And so just for any of you who are maybe thinking that in the back of your head and were maybe a bit scared to actually ask it out loud, I just wanted to show you why I think it does matter. Scientists are people. They have their own sociocultural baggage. They will study the things that influence them. They will interpret their results in the way that matches their own worldviews. And so it is important that we have more diversity within our scientists, within our reporting. And I think especially with climate change, because it's such a global problem and it really does affect the poorest and, well, people of color, women, the most disadvantaged people the most. And so I went ahead and I then made this resource called the Global South Climate Database. So this is a publicly available, searchable database, and I thought this was the most valuable thing I could share with all of you communicators, because this database has been alive for a few years now, and I think it really is a very helpful resource. So just very quickly, I want to show you, is the video going to play? Yeah. I want to show you how you can find and use this database, because I really think this is the most helpful thing that I can give to you all today. So you want to go to the Carbon Brief website, to the science section. So Carbon Brief, that's Carbon Brief, not Climate Brief, as a lot of people say. And then you can go and find the Global South Climate database here, and it is fully searchable. Every expert on the database has added their name voluntarily, like they have found the database and voluntarily given their details. So you know they are a Global South expert who wants to be contacted. We have then filtered and verified every single one of those experts ourselves. There's more than 1,000 experts from more than 100 countries. And you can filter by their region, by their area of expertise, by their gender, and then you can manually type into the search field as well, by language as well. So yeah, I use this every single day, basically, when I'm trying to find experts for my stories. And there are some really interesting people on there who I don't think I would have found otherwise. So yeah, I would encourage all of you to really think about this in your own communications as well.
Thanks, Aisha. Oh, Jen, over to you.
Thank you. Hi everyone, so I'm Jen from Countersyn. Countersyn was set up pre-COVID, and it really just had one mission at the time, which was to connect with the movable middle. And what we meant by that is the broad public who care about climate change and nature, but not passionately. It's not like they're going to be the ones marching down the streets, but they do care. And they believe climate change is real, but again, they either feel powerless or perhaps distracted to do anything about it. They've got other things on their agenda at the time. But the feeling was, even back then, and I think it's even more the case now, that if we didn't actually bring that mass middle and engage them in some ways, we're not going to win this argument, we're not going to succeed, and I think that is becoming more and more apparent as time's gone on. So we quickly concluded that the best way we could actually reach this movable middle was through culture, and connecting climate to the things in their lives that they love, and using messages that they trust to tell these messages, to talk about climate but in a new way. And for Countersyn, we've really begun this work, and it is still beginning. We haven't got the perfect formula yet, but we've begun it through sport, and specifically through football. And you might ask, why football? Because I think it is the most popular cultural force on the planet. It's a source of joy and pride for billions. It's something that can unite rivals, it can bridge divides, and it's a thing that makes people feel part of something bigger. You're part of a fan group, you're part of a team, you're part of something sort of beyond. And it provides a vehicle through which we can tell new stories about climate and create new narratives. And that's one which we feel it shouldn't be rooted in guilt or sacrifice, but it's actually through love. It's love of the game, of that community, of the place, and the seasons that make football possible. We've run campaigns now in the UK, Green Football. We've just finished one in Brazil, Terra FC or Earth FC, and we're beginning one around the World Cup next year, and we hope to continue building these out. And I just wanted to share a few of the key lessons that I think we've learned at this global level. These are quite broad things, but I'll try and drill into them a little bit. And then I've got a video to share as well, which is from our most recent Green Football campaign. So going back to that point, you reach the mainstream through the things in their lives that they love. You need to go to them. It's not about, we can't drag people over to where we are, go, look over here about the climate. It's going to where they are and connecting climate to the thing that makes sense in that community and making it make sense for them, bringing it down to quite a local, granular level. Second point is that a trusted message carriers are as important as the message. We found through our research actually that it was the football club in most people's cases that was the thing that, over and above the players, I think because players probably move around, it was the club that really connected with fans the most. And if we can find new ways for clubs to authentically talk about climate, they can't be talking about a win they had at the weekend and suddenly go and recycle. It's got to be weaved in a message that makes sense for their fan group. But that is a trusted message source for many people, and it's not one that we've necessarily, us, but other people as well, we haven't necessarily really worked through how that can be exploited is the wrong word, but really kind of used to its advantage. Emotion and passion trumps data. The previous talk, Lucy was making a similar point. I think she's saying we have to simplify it. And I think I'm saying the same thing, but in a different way. I think a lot of time we want to lead with the data because it is very compelling when you dig into it, and it's quite scary, and we can use that fear factor. But I think, and we need to use that science. Everything we say has to be backed up by the science, but it's actually, we're not sort of tugging at people's heartstrings in the right way if we lead with sort of 1.5 or not, percentages, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's actually the raw emotion of a situation that's going to sort of actually get people to connect, listen, and then maybe choose to listen again or take action in the future. The power of community, building momentum. Again, I think there's this growing sense out there that people don't care. We might care, but the person next to us doesn't care as much as we do. And I think actually the data bears out that that's not true either. There's this stat out that's been used around COP about 89% of us care. And it might be we care in different ways, and we might disagree about how we need to get there, but we all care. And I think, again, fan groups, community groups, the people in the stands around us at a football game, if we can start to show that actually all these people care as much as we do, I think that's a very powerful moment that we can start to use. National moments create pride, unity, and build identity. I think if you go back and think about how the Lionesses used their first Euro win to really kind of put out message about needing more funding for girls' sport, and that led to policy change around the government really kind of committing to the 600 million that they put into the PE school premium. That's a moment that they used and were able to then drive a message through. And think if we were able to win the World Cup next year, or how could we use these moments to really kind of drive through a different message, because we're taking a sort of a national moment of pride for the country and then galvanizing that. And finally, capture hearts and minds by linking the environmental reasons to cost of living. I think so much of it, as I said before, we talk about it in ways of sacrifice. And yes, I'm not saying there aren't some difficult conversations to be had about the sacrifices we might all have to make, but actually there are actually a lot of co-benefits as well to some of the simpler climate actions we can take. And perhaps if I could click through, which button am I pressing here? This one. Let's see if this works.
Climate change is threatening the future of football. That's why the 2025 Green Football campaign launched the Great Save, tackling kit waste as a way to act on climate change through football. Clubs, players, fans, schools and communities from across the country, they all stepped up, shared their stories and inspired others to sell, donate, reuse and repair their kit to keep it out of landfill.
The players want to get behind good campaigns, and this is one of them.
We saw incredible community action, boot swaps, repair workshops, donation points on match days and TV features brought the message to life. The impact was felt across the country. Tons of kit was saved from landfill and fans scored thousands of green goals for their club. Media coverage reached millions and thousands more were inspired to take part.
Oh, this is my God.
Let's go even further next season and keep making the great save.
I mean, that's a very quick video. There's a longer version if anyone's interested, and a full impact report you can read. But I guess the point I want to make here is about, we used kits and sort of the fact that there are so many textiles going into landfill, and the fashion industry as a whole is kind of, I think, the third biggest polluter, etc. We weren't really talking about that, but we were just saying, hey, there is so much to be valued in kit. You can make money out of it, you can upcycle it, you can sell it, you can donate it. There was so many different things you can do with it, and there was a lot of co-benefits there for people, and that was just a sort of a wedge issue into talking about the wider climate thing, but using sport and kit was our way through on that. So I think, yeah, linking it to cost of living, but doing it actually in a positive way can also kind of really get people sort of on the pitch, to continue the analogy. Two final points I'll just make before I pass on. One is about the connection piece. So I think the research that we've done, other people bears out, seems to show that there is just still this disconnection between climate change and people's everyday lives, when actually it's not. Climate is everything, it is our lives. A recent survey we did with our partners Football for Future, over in the States ahead of the World Cups next year, showed that many Americans do not understand that global warming is affecting extreme weather events. So they're not seeing the extreme heat and sea level rise is connected to global warming. And I think, if we can start to make that connection for people through football, we bring it down to their local pitch. It's too hot here to play, it's too flooded here. That's a way to connect people and start to get people to go, well, I don't want that to happen. I want to see this pitch continue so I can play, my kids can play, I can watch my favorite teams. That provides an opportunity for us. A similar survey, 85% of fans recognize extreme weather is already affecting football, yet fewer than half connect this to climate change. So again, this is not a barrier. This, for us, I think, is a strategic opportunity. How do we make that connection for people? How can we really get them to see big global thing over here connected down to a very local level for something that they love and really are passionate about over here? I think that makes it make sense with people. And I think the same is true in nature. I know this is, I've talked a bit about climate. I know this is much more of a nature thing. we talked about nature as an overt sort of theme next year for green football, and some of the stakeholders in our group who come from the football world were like, well, I don't think we can really make the connection between football and nature. And I was thinking, football is nature. I mean, you're playing it outside in the fresh air, on grass most of the time. You know, it absolutely is. A beautiful game cannot exist if it doesn't exist in a beautiful planet and a healthy planet. And I think if people are saying, oh, these two things aren't connected, that's there and that's there, well, we've got, there's a bit of a challenge there, should we say, for us to kind of make that connection again for people. And just a final point, we need more joy. And I think this was a point made by, again, Lucy in the previous panel. She called out the same campaign that I've seen recently, the WWF one, which I thought was so brilliant around numbers are up. We're seeing numbers up here, we're seeing numbers up there. And I'm, you know, and again, it's not to say that there isn't a lot of work to be done. We are, you know, against all odds, we're still kind of, we're in second half, we're still losing, etc., to play out that analogy. But I think where there is progress, we need to absolutely be shouting and talking about that, because I think otherwise there's this sense of futility and people do not feel like they can actually do anything that's going to make a difference. I don't think by talking about the wins, we're going to lead to complacency. I think actually that's the way that we're going to get people onto the pitch. And I think that's our secret weapon. So connection and joy.
Wonderful, thank you. So I've run Wild in the City. We're 13 years old now. I'm just going to give you a quick visual tour of who we are before I talk about some of the research we've been doing to challenge some of the assumptions we've encountered in the sector. So we help people of colour find a sense of connection to nature and the countryside in the UK. Go to the next slide. One of the main ways we do this is to help build community. For many people of colour, there is a long journey to the experience of being disconnected. I'm sure we're all aware of the research that says that we're less present in nature than white communities. And one of the reasons is in our various migrations, we lose the relational oral tradition, which we would have had back in our countries of heritage for learning about nature and the natural world. So it creates a disconnect in sense of the knowledge about nature and the natural world, but also a sense of protectiveness that we've inherited from older generations that in their migration to the UK encountered hostility in their quest to find work, to get children into education. We can all remember back to the signs of no dogs, no blacks, no Irish. And so then the idea of going off into the countryside became more intimidating, where there are fewer numbers of people of colour. And this message became internalised that it's not for us. And alongside that, people's experiences of being made to feel more visible because of their ethnic difference, making nature feel unsafe for a lot of people. If we go on to the next slide. The way we help people connect is through programmes in natural history, talking about the ecology of the natural landscape, but also the cultural history of landscapes. Next slide. We also lead regular hikes, helping people go out into the open countryside. Next slide. And we also teach people woodland living skills, which is a really powerful way of having a sense of the presence of ancestors, whether the ancestors of this land or our ancestors from countries of heritage. That way of living in harmony with nature and the natural world that brings attention to our relationships within the community, how we need each other, the philosophy of cooperation, not just with nature, but also between ourselves. If we go to the next slide. We are a therapeutically based organisation, so we spend a lot of time reflecting on what is our relationship with nature and the natural world. For those of us that have experienced disconnect, what were the reasons behind that? What were the causes? So the work necessarily includes a lot of work to repair and recover. There's a sense of trauma in the loss of connection, sometimes feelings of anger, but also shame in not having a connection with nature and the natural world. So there's a lot of time around the fire exploring feeling and emotion about relationship with nature, or the way in which we've come to be disenfranchised or disconnected from the natural world. If we go to the next slide. So the sector's quite aware that we're one of the least diverse sectors in the UK. And when I started to work in the environmental sector, the assumption was it's because people of colour just aren't interested in nature. It's not within our culture. Now, I and the people I work with will tell you that's not the case at all. Often there's a very deep yearning to have connection with nature. Our cultures in countries of heritage are deeply embedded in the knowledge of nature and the natural world. So what was missing from this discussion about why we were less present were the perspectives of people of colour. What was happening was that typically the white middle class staffing within NGOs were sort of pontificating themselves about why people of colour weren't connected, and not really engaging with people of colour directly to ask. So I have a background in anthropology as well as psychotherapy, and we conducted ethnographic research with people of colour, usually around the fire under the canopy of trees, or it might be a break on the trail, to have conversation about what is our relationship with nature, which was documented in a 3-year action research project. The story of people of colour in relationship with nature then becomes interwoven with our story as a Black-led organisation in how we tell this story, because our story as a Black-led organisation is the struggle to gain resources to be able to tell the story. So whilst the sector's been saying over the last 10 years, we've been running, where are the people of colour, how can we engage, how can we diversify, there have been several organisations like mine who have some answers, who have a track record in engaging people of colour, but just don't have the resources and therefore the capacity to tell our stories. And so for me, there's a lost decade in being able to diversify, being able to share the stories of many, many communities who are passionate about nature. So the research itself was unfunded. We had to self-fund as an organisation, which largely meant giving our time for free. I did write it up as an article, which was eventually published in The Ecologist, which has been very influential in the national conversation around the dynamics of race. It's called Black Absence in Green Places. But there was a journey also to getting that article published. I think they'd recently published a piece by another Black journalist profiling different Black organisations and leaders in nature. So initially we were told to come back in 18 months because they'd just published a Black interest piece. So these kind of attitudes have also been part of our battle to tell our stories. I was then invited to publish the research as a chapter in a volume by Springer on environmental justice in the Northern Hemisphere, which we did. But again, we were asked to pay to get that published, and if we wanted it to be open source, we had to pay. And again, we're struggling for resources. It's not something we're able to do. So there's a story for us in this piece of research which challenges and changed the narrative around engagement. Has been a real struggle just to have the resources to be able to tell the story. I'm trying to keep to time and give a snapshot. Where am I?
You're all right.
Okay.
We've got 2 minutes.
Wonderful, thank you. So if we go to the next slide, please. This is the happy story that we want to be telling about nature guides who are people of colour who lead their community in nature and bring back the oral tradition within families and communities for learning about nature and the natural world. And we're really excited that after 10 years we actually have created, been funded to have a comms budget. It's probably quite small fry compared to a lot of organisations, but we have 90,000 over 3 years, and that's the best funding we've had in our 10 years of operation for communications. And we're really excited because for 10 years we've had the know-how, we know who we want to reach and how, we just haven't had the capacity. Because of our therapeutic underpinning, social media doesn't feel like a good fit for us, although pragmatically there's a social reality of being seen quickly and easily. But long form is really the space we want to be, and that does require resources. So we're really excited to build the channels to speak to audience of colour, because our experiences is in the environmental sector, whether it's topical news or thematic debates, the environmental sector isn't speaking to people of colour. We're left out of the conversation. And as a Black-led organisation, we consider ourselves to be a ghost stakeholder. We're seen, people sort of know about us, but we're not quite acknowledged. We're not quite seen as a peer and pulled into the conversation. So on the topic of the conference theme, Against All Odds, is our survival over 10 years with very little resources, and our determination to tell the story of many people of colour who are deeply passionate about nature, are really engaging communities. And we want to demonstrate and showcase Black and brown leadership in nature, because we are here and we're doing great work. What's been lacking is the resources, and there's a story around that lack of resources. Why has it been so difficult for organisations serving people of colour and led by people of colour to get the resources to demonstrate their leadership at a time when the sector is saying, where are the people of colour?
Thank you, Beth. Thank you so much, all of you, for your stories, and I hope that's fueled some questions for you. I'd like to see what's out there, so please do raise your hand. I think Savita is here with the microphone. There she is. Do we have anything online, Savita? Okay, all right, so online and in the room, questions for our panel. If not, I'm going to take chair's liberty. Oh, there's one here. Fantastic.
Hi, so with a lot of the DEI rollback that happened in the States and then there's been ripple effects here, how are you managing, all of you?
I think for the whole sector, there's obviously been a recent crisis of funding. Everyone's finding it difficult. But for us, that really isn't our biggest challenge. For us, historically, within our lifetime, we've struggled to access funds. So the recent sort of cultural shift around D&I hasn't really had that huge an impact compared to where we already were.
Yeah, I think so for Carbon Brief. I mean, so we're really lucky with our funding. We're funded by the European Climate Foundation, and that funding is no strings attached. We can kind of do what we want with that funding. So from our point of view, things like my Global South Climate database that I made, that's something that I'm allowed to do on my own time as long as the editors are happy for me to work on it, which they are because they already support this initiative, which is fantastic. I guess where I'm going to see this coming through, maybe not immediately, but in the next few years, is in the more systemic changes around academic publishing. So already we know that people of colour are much less likely to have the money to conduct research, to have the money to publish, to have the resources, to have supercomputers, to have good internet, to have field stuff, all of that stuff. I'm sure that we'll see this, well, I hope not, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see this playing out in the next few years. Like as a trickle-down effect in publications. I'm actually hoping to kind of redo some of my analysis periodically, and we'll see what happens, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that trickle-down effect later.
Anything you want to add?
I mean, from a funding perspective, yes, we struggle to get funding for the work we're doing in the sense that people just go, well, culture is still new for people and as a channel through. I think there's a slightly different answer to the question that was asked. So, yeah.
Any more from the floor?
Just to follow on,
Just
follow on from Aisha's presentation and answers. It's a global story. You saw the sort of a shadification in Aisha's research of who gets cited and who doesn't. And certainly the colleagues I've nurtured in America and Africa tell the same story. People of colour struggle to get the resources to be able to own their own stories and to tell those stories. And often they're told on our behalf in a way that diminishes us.
There's one here.
Hi, thank you very much. Some really interesting reflections there. I just wanted to ask Jen about the research that you mentioned looking at whether football fans connected extreme weather to climate change or not. The stats that you quoted, the research you quoted, is that purely US, or do you have UK specific data on that as well?
That was purely US. So there was actually two stats. So one is there's a Pictures in Power report that Football for Future and Common Goal put out. So that was sort of one piece of data. And the second piece was a Yale piece, which again is from Yale Climate Communication Centre. And that was also looking at specifically at US citizens. We haven't done the same thing over in the UK yet, but I think it's something that we are looking into to see if it's a similar pattern over here.
Thanks. And then just a reflection on the question about diversity, then I don't know if, Beth, you've seen the climate outreach data that has cut by ethnicity as well, and shows actually ethnic minorities are more interested than the rest of the population on quite a few climate issues, which I thought was really revealing considering how little content there is for them.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but it wouldn't surprise me. The issue isn't that we are uninterested, it's we often don't have the capacity to take part.
Oh, there's lots now. Brilliant.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, all of you. That's been the most fascinating discussion. Really enjoyed it. So I'm a climate and nature communicator, and I think there's a growing awareness, and I think this was reflected at COP, at least in the reaction, of the need to hear from Indigenous voices. And I wondered actually if any of you had any reflections about how we can all get better at making sure we're bringing in Indigenous voices to the either whether it's the impacts of climate change or the potential solutions.
You want to take that?
Yeah. So as just as a very quick bit of context, where I work, Carbon Brief. So we're a climate journalism site specifically for climate change, and our audience tends to be government, scientists, journalists. Like, we're not targeting a general public audience, we're targeting a more educated audience. And so the way that we have to tackle communications is quite different. And so I guess I have two answers. One would be for a kind of more general public leaning organization, which is where I think, for example, in the previous session, people were talking about human interest stories. And I think that's where kind of talking to Indigenous populations can be really powerful, because I think, well, a lot of the interviews I've seen, partly they're fantastic orators and storytellers, or a lot of the people I've seen have been, and the stories they have to tell are quite powerful and quite new and haven't come across yet. And I think that's where I see a lot of things in The Guardian, for example, about Indigenous journalists or Indigenous scientists talking about the work they do and the struggles they have found, and I can think that can be really powerful. Then, I mean, the other reflection I would have is maybe on the reasons that it can be more difficult, for example, like organisations like mine, to include Indigenous experts. And so, for example, for the Global South database, I wanted to include Indigenous experts, but one of the way that we screen people, because we get a lot of bots and we get a lot of whatever, is making sure they have a website or a Google Scholar page or an institutional page. And we spent quite a long time thinking about how else we could screen people in and out. And, well, basically, we are requiring people to have one of these things that a lot of Indigenous experts don't have. And so that's been a huge barrier that I'm quite frustrated about, to getting Indigenous people into our work. And so we have been finding other ways to do it. So, for example, through interviews and through spotlight features, that kind of thing. But getting people then to provide quotes on the articles that I write who are Indigenous backgrounds is quite difficult. And that's something that I'm still working on, and that I'm hoping to keep working on going forwards. But I think Indigenous experts can have quite a unique position, and there aren't spaces in the media to accommodate them yet, I feel. I've talked a lot, I don't know if either of you have stuff to add on that.
I mean, that's really interesting. I mean, I work in Brazil. We started as an Indigenous football league out there, and it doesn't matter where you go, people love football. And so we started. We have a sort of a connection with them, and we started to talk to them. And I think, just to your point, they have the most interesting stories and solutions can come from these different groups of people. And I think that for us, the challenge is how do we weave that into the football piece, and how can we really bring those to the fore. Our work in Brazil will continue next year into the Women's World Cup there in 2027. So it'd be, I think, exciting and a challenge for us to make sure that those voices are brought through into our work.
Yeah, I'd echo what's said. I'd also introduce, again, I keep talking about resources because the financing is the setback. We were approached by colleagues from Africa last year in the summer looking for support to be able to travel to the UK, a letter of invite to support them coming over to do climate work, and also to be connected with colleagues in the States so they could attend a climate summit there. So our African colleagues had real challenge in having their seat at the table. One, to get access to the country where the event was being held, and then two, the resources to fund that travel. So there's a broad picture about why we're not hearing these voices. Our world is smaller. We tend to sort of other Indigenous people, but it is quite accessible to make connections with people online now. As Aisha said, and just to think about them when you're writing your stories.
Yeah. What would you most like to see NGOs do to listen to more of the diverse voices and to connect with people kind of where they're at? Are there anything that you're kind of sitting there thinking, I wish the NGOs were doing this, or I wish environmental charities were connecting with people in these ways?
I guess I work with a lot of organisations, helping them to reflect on race and diversification. And one of the questions is to really probe, do you really want to diversify? Because some people say it because it sounds like the right thing to say. But when you actually look at what that would mean in terms of your models for internal communications, external communications, they realise, do you know what, actually we like this model and we know how to talk to this white middle class audience. That's really what we want to be doing. Often it can be tied to a membership as well. So really where we're going is we want to increase this membership. With black and brown audiences, the end result might not be someone paying £100 a year to join. And so actually you realise there's a different process, there's a different model. Do you actually want to be investing in that model? And if not, how might you support other people to activate a model that will speak to those audiences? So I think some honesty. It might be that not everyone needs to speak to everyone, but perhaps we can all collaborate in a way to make sure all audiences are addressed. There might be more ways of collaborating that enables everyone to be reached.
Any more perspectives from here?
This might be one for me.
Okay. Any more questions from the floor? And anything online, Savita?
We did have a question just coming through online about representation in the media and the kind of mass media, and how important that was for encouraging participation with nature.
I think really important. We've had a lot of journalists who are black and Asian come and want to tell our story. They come and meet with us for hours, for the day, sometimes following us for weeks. They might be filmmakers, or it might be a long form article that they're working on. But then they get stuck because they have to pitch that to their editor or their editorial team, and things fall apart. So it's systemic, that a lot of the journalists that would like to tell our story then find there's gatekeeping within their own media organisations. So the more representation within those media organisations who can help understand why the stories are important, then the more our stories will be told.
Beth, is there a particular example of something where it's worked well that stands out for you?
So I'm thinking media related, because often the answer is no. That that's why it's so important that we can tell our story ourselves. I think the tendency is organisations realise they're not very diverse. They want some black and brown coverage, and so really they're trying to insert us into a story they're already writing, and in doing that it diminishes our story, and really we end up being a photo library for people, and that's a repeat experience, unfortunately.
Yeah, really important messages here, particularly for all you national journalists in the audience. Perspectives from our other panel members.
I mean, if I could just jump in on the media, because I mean that's where I'm at. So Carbon Brief started as like a UK-based organisation, mainly white, and then during COVID we really expanded. So we now have journalists in India and Nigeria and Mexico and like all over the place, and it has improved our coverage so much. Like to have, for example, our journalist from India, Arjuna Chandrasekhar, and she went and looked at coal mining communities and did this like on the ground piece, and that's something we would have never done before, and it was really engaging, and it brought in like this whole new audience, and we can kind of see it in the stats, who's reading our pieces and who's not, and it's, just to like hammer home this point again, that diversity it's not like doing a favor to people and like letting people into these spaces, right? It's really beneficial for everybody, and you can see it. Journalists as well, they write about the stuff they're interested in. I mean, I don't think it's an accident that I'm the person who did this diversity analysis and this global South database stuff, and I think people will write about the things that they care about and will fight for those things. And I think also sometimes, hopefully, in good organizations, editors can see that, and they can see when you're really passionate about something, and then they will, if they're good editors at a good organization, they will help you take those stories forward. So just to maybe have a good news slant on that as well. Although obviously not doubting your experiences as well, because that does sound quite indicative of a lot of stuff I've heard with other organisations.
And Jen, anything that stands out for you national media-wise?
Well, I suppose just to that, I think sport can be that great leveller, and that's not just football, but sports generally. I think it sort of takes away those barriers, and it's something that people just get behind, and it, all sorts of different people can support a different team, and it's just a way to actually bring a message to people about it kind of neutralises it in some ways, because we're just talking about the pitch where everyone is playing there and then. You might disagree with that. There might be some sort of, still some barriers there. But I think sports generally as a channel through which we can actually talk about climate in ways that just talks about it at a level that everyone understands, because it comes down to something more emotive, is really important.
I think we've got time for one more sneaky question, if there is one out there. Oh yeah, there is one behind you, Savita.
Hey, thanks for all your presentations. I work quite closely with businesses and water as part of nature. So I guess from a slightly selfish perspective, I'm curious about how water features in each of your work.
Well, we're really excited that we're about to embark on a 5-year programme training 45 nature guides, and it will be a project that's centred around chalk streams in southern England. Yes, yeah. So it will help raise awareness of what a unique and special habitat they are, but also give communities that haven't traditionally been involved lots of hands-on experience with restoration. And it will also become a component within our teaching. When we teach nature guides, they have a modular training, and chalk streams as a habitat will become part of that training.
I mean, water features for us in the sense of flooding. I mean, I don't know the stat off the top of my head, but the amount of grassroots games that are called off every year now because of flooding, this is in the UK, and it happens elsewhere as well, obviously, it's huge and it's increasing. And again, it just goes back to us about that symptom and cause. People know that their matches are cancelled, they know that they're not able to play that weekend, but whether or not people are always connecting that back to this is because of X, this is because of climate change, global warming, unclear. So in the UK especially, we know that's the case elsewhere. So I think for us, again, it's about making that connection for people. And there's knock-on things with that. You know, if you can't play the game, well, that's in itself sad, but there's also the mental health benefits to actually being outside and playing with your friends, etc., etc. So there's all sorts of reasons why we need to protect the pitches where we play, at both a grassroots, and that's up to a professional level as well. And helping people to make that connection and bring it down to something very local that they feel passionate about is how we can, I think, get people to, join us.
I mean, yeah, as a science journalist, I mean, sea level rise, flooding, glaciers, ice sheets, it's everything. And then the absence of water, droughts, deforestation linking into that, where is water not a part of it? And Carbon Brief has a food, land and nature team, which I guess would have even more stuff to say on water, things about water in the agricultural system, that kind of thing. It's obviously a huge topic. I don't know if this is exactly how you meant it when you were saying water, but yeah, for me, it's in basically everything I do. I mean, I guess one of the biggest things is Carbon Brief has this attribution map. So attribution is the study of how much more intense or likely extreme weather events were as a result of climate change, and Carbon Brief has the definitive map of all of them that have ever been published. Ever, and so many of those are just about how floods are getting worse, how extreme rain is getting worse, how storms are getting worse, how droughts are getting worse, and the vast majority of those are due to climate change. So, yeah.
Amazing. Well, look, thank you so much to our amazing panel. I could sit here all day and talk to you. I could really lose track of time quite easily. I think some interesting conversations to be had at lunchtime. If you're looking for some diverse voices for your articles, then go to Aisha. If you've got some funding, then Beth wants to hear from you. And look, thank you to all of you. I've left my card on the table. I'd love to connect with you. You can enter your email address through the QR code there, and we'll stay in touch. Thank you so much. I think it's lunchtime now, so let's just give a round of applause to an amazing panel. Thank you very much.